verse 1 through 11. It was 2 days before the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread, when the chief priests and the scribes were looking for a cunning way to arrest Jesus and kill him. Not during the feast, they said, so that there won't be a riot among the people. While he was in Bethany, at the house of Simon the leper, he was reclining at the table, and a woman came with him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured it on his head. But some were expressing indignation to one another. Why has this perfume been wasted? For this perfume might have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor. And they began to scold her. And Jesus replied, leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? She has done a noble thing for me. You will always have the poor with you. And you can do what is good for them whenever you want. But you do not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body in advance for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will also be told in her memory. So let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about where we're at. I think it's always helpful. I do this every time I go prep a sermon. I think it's helpful for us to get into the state of where we're at. So Jesus, helps when I'm on the right slide, guys. So far what we've seen is Jesus is done with his ministry. He's done with his miracles. Essentially, he's now in a teaching stage, and it's right before his death. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second, because I think it actually builds the context a little bit better for what we're reading here in this passage. But have you ever thought about this? We all do benefit and cost analysis. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, we do this in our mind. We'll go, okay, so this is the thing that costs something. There's got to be a benefit to me in some way. And we do this analysis all the time. Like, you're going to buy a truck. Is this truck, the benefit of having this truck, you know, I can commute to work, I can haul loads or whatever it is the price of this truck worth the benefit that I get from using it? But we don't just do it in that. We actually do it, like, in our physical bodies too, right? Working out. Some of us love to do that, right? So you have to, when you go to work out, you're doing a cost-benefit analysis, right? What's the benefit? Well, you're healthier, you're fit, maybe you look better. I don't know. You know, these are all possibilities, but we do these like, how do I get motivated to do this thing? Or is it worth me doing it? Or would I rather have that bag of potato chips and just sit on the couch, right? Yes. Thank you, Luke. Truth. We don't just do it with physical, we don't just do it with finances, we do it emotionally, too. Have you ever had that person that just drains you in your life? It's just constant. You're like, is this worth the relationship I have with them? We do cost analysis. We do benefit to cost analysis in just about everything. Having kids, having friends, having a spouse. How do you judge the value of Jesus? What's the benefit to cost of a relationship with Jesus? And in this text, we see three different benefit to cost analysis of Jesus. We see the woman. We see those that are there with him. This would have been primarily the disciples. And Judas. Did I not finish that text? I did not. Sorry. Verse 10. I just realized I didn't read that. Verse 10. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. And when they had heard this, they were glad and promised to give him money. So he started looking for a good opportunity to betray Jesus. So there's three different benefit to cost analysis. But again, let's look at the context, because I think that we often think of of this kind of passage is right before is kind of in its own sterile thing. And it's not. There's actually a lot going on in this last week of Jesus' life. In fact, we're now actually in the last days. You could almost say the last hours. Jesus knows it. Miracles are stopped. Scribes are not trying to trap him anymore. They're just trying to kill him. So the leaders are trying to kill him, but they want to do it within the next few days. Did you see that in the first verse? They're trying to do it before the festivals. And this is important because if you think about what's going on, okay, so Jerusalem is about 50,000 people is the estimation at this time. It's about 50,000 people. But during these weeks, these two festivals, it's believed that the population would swell to 250,000. These are not hometown people anymore. These are people that would have seen Jesus out in Galilee, along the hillsides. And so there's an air. It's the Passover. There's a tension in the air. Not only that, people would have been very keen on Daniel chapter 9. And if you're not familiar with Daniel chapter 9, it's where Daniel predicts the exile will end. And he says it'll be 70 times 7, which is about 490 years. And this is about the time. They're going, this is the time, right now. This is happening. So you have the Passover. What does the Passover represent to them? God leading them out of slavery. What do they feel like in this land? They're oppressed by the Romans. And so you have all of this tension around the Passover. The time has come for Israel to have its freedom once again. It's a very political time. Not only that, it's between two holidays. Both of the holidays have to do with God leading his people out of Israel. So God's about to do something. And it's actually believed too or not believed, there were zealots. Have you heard that term before? The zealots? These were militant guys. And in fact, a lot of times they would be in the cliffs and hiding out around Jerusalem. They were doing these raids on the Romans. So you have this violence acts happening, right? And then you have Passover, and the tension has built. And these guys are, the scribes, the Pharisees, and the teachers of the law are like, we got to get rid of this guy. He's going to ruin everything. So Jerusalem is a tinderbox. And the Jewish leaders don't want it to explode. It tells us where Jesus is staying. He's in Bethany. We talked about that before. Bethany's a little town right outside. Like many pilgrims, they couldn't all stay in there, so they're out there, and they're in this town, Bethany, which is a village, and then they're staying at Simon the leper. Here, you want to hear some really interesting things about Simon the leper? I don't know anything about it. We don't know anything about it. Simon the leper probably was a leper, and he's known, right? Why is he referring to him? Well, because this is a first-hand account, right? This is John Mark writing this down, and he's putting people like Simon the leper. You can go to Bethany and meet Simon the leper. That's why he's name dropping him. We don't know anything else about him. Jesus stayed at his house. Jesus was a real person, a real time. We see that Jesus is reclining. He's eating. That's what they do, right? They lay kind of on their side and they're eating. And this woman comes, and she brings this alabaster, it's like a stone jar that's filled with an expensive nard. Now, what is the significance of the nard? Not really anything in particular, other than why does it go to such detail to tell us that it was, in this alabaster thing? It's because it's worth a lot. We see in verse 5 that it says it's worth about, they guess it's around 300 denarii. That's about an average person's salary for the year. That's a lot of money in one jar. So what is she doing with this jar? Well, we can only really speculate a little bit, but here's what this kind of thing normally would have been. It typically would have been an heirloom type of thing, or a dowry, right? A dowry for her if she was to get married. If not that, then it might have been for her burial. But I think even more significant than whether or not it's a dowry or anything else, this is her 401k life insurance policy all wrapped up into one. If everything goes sideways, I have this jar. I can sell this jar and live for a year. That's weighty when you think about that. And she comes, she doesn't pour out just a little bit. It says that she breaks it. And then she pours it out over Jesus' head. Now, for us, that's probably would be a weird thing for somebody to do, but in this time it's a very honoring thing to do. Right? Does this story remind you of anything? It sure did me. 2 weeks ago, I preached about a woman that gave all that she had. You remember that? The 2 coins? We have this one widow, a marginalized person, giving all that she had, followed by Jesus saying, I'm coming back someday. Be ready. And then again, we see a woman coming, giving her future to Jesus. What do you think her benefit to cost analysis was of Jesus? What is this woman's benefit to cost analysis? What is Jesus worth to her? What is she getting out of this? Think about it. What is she getting out of this? It's clear that she had a high place with Jesus, right? I mean, there's clearly. She sees Jesus that it is worth all of her investment. Jesus is worthy to her of her future. She's banking on Jesus for her future. She's literally at the poker table, and she's doing an all-in. Now, some of us play poker at the Hetrick's house, and when we say all in, we just put a bunch of chips in, right? Not true. We're saying she's putting her house, her car, I'm all in on Jesus. What is Jesus worth to you and to me? Where are you in this story? Does her radical benefit to cost analysis make you uncomfortable? Does it? It does me. It does. It makes me uncomfortable. Does it make you squirm a little bit? Gosh, come on. You keep talking about these radicals. It's just in the text, guys. It seems a little crazy, a little radical. Where's the balance in her life? Or are you inspired a little bit? I think most of us are just uncomfortable. And then we see the response of the disciples. We don't know which disciples, but we know one of them in particular, but clearly there was more than one that was talking about this. They're a little annoyed. It's one thing to watch a widow give a couple of coins, but this is a lot of money. Shouldn't she be giving it to the poor? What is this disciples' benefit to cost analysis of Jesus? This lady is wasting. This is a waste. Could have done so much with that money, like the poor. I got a question for you. Do you really think these guys are super concerned about the poor? Maybe. Do you remember chapters before what these guys were really concerned about? Their position. Yeah. Where am I in the kingdom? You think that she made them feel a little uncomfortable? She had just given it all. And they're like, come on. What am I supposed to do with that? We do that, don't we? When we see somebody do something radical for Jesus, we go, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, maybe you should tame it back a little bit. Why do we do that? It makes us uncomfortable. Yeah, it makes us uncomfortable. These guys, you know, I think this actually should be really good, make us also feel a little bit better too, to have the disciples do this, right? Because Jesus over and over again has compassion for these guys. They make mistakes over and over again, and they will get it, and they will give their life for Jesus. So that's not, I don't want to just beat up the disciples. I think it should actually encourage us. I think the poor, we kind of use them as a scapegoat sometimes. I think that's what they're doing. I think they're using the idea of this could have been given to the poor as a scapegoat. Because they aren't valuing Jesus like she is, and they know it. Let's read verse 6, 69. Jesus replied, this is what Jesus says to them. Leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? She has done a noble thing for me. You will always have the poor with you, and you can do what is good for them whenever you want. But you don't always have me. She has done what she could do, and she has anointed my body in advance for burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will also be told of memory. Jesus is saying, shut your mouth. Leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? I think we might even put this in a different way. What is your motivation for your scrutiny of her? I think it's that kind of a question. Why are you bothering her? Not just like, hey, what's the big deal? Why? What's your motivation, guys? Why are you doing this? And Jesus says that she has done a noble thing. And in one sense, it really is a noble, as a nobles, right? A kingship. We've just read as in the past where Jesus comes in like a king on a donkey into Jerusalem, his city. And now he's being anointed with oil, which is how they would anoint the king with oil. And later he will have a crown put upon his head and a robe wrapped around his body, and he will take his position upon his throne. But in another sense, what he's talking about is the anointing of his body for burial. Now this is if you think about this, when he's going to die, there is no time before when he dies and the festivities to anoint his body with oil. They don't embalm like the Egyptians, they anoint them. So this expensive nard would have filled, the aroma would have filled the house, it would have filled everybody. It would have been on you. But likely, Jesus still smelled of it as he hung on the cross. She was anointing his body for burial. Did she know it? I have no idea if she knew it or not. She has done a noble thing. Jesus is really telling them, you are thinking still of earthly things, and I'm talking about kingdom things. This is the kingdom to come. I am the king to come. And what she's doing is a noble thing. You ever think about this? How much money do you think would have been spent on a noble procession? Or an anointing or a crowning of a king? Or a burial of a king? Do you think it would have been more than a middle-class person's yearly income? Yeah, definitely. And it's funny to me, just as I was thinking about this, that they are so concerned, they're concerned with the poor, and Jesus is homeless. They're concerned about the poor. We should be concerned about the poor, right? Yes, we should. In fact, Jesus is actually referencing Deuteronomy 15 when he says, the poor you will always have. He's referring to the law of Moses. And what is this law in particular that he's talking about? Well, if you remember the story of Ruth and Boaz, Ruth is poor. And Boaz has his fields, and he leaves the edge for her to pick up The poor you will always have. You should and always should care for the poor. We need to care for the poor, church. But Jesus is saying, this is a particular time and a particular place, and I'm not going to be with you much longer. She's doing a noble thing. The issue is not the poor. The issue is whether or not Jesus is worthy. Is Jesus worth your inheritance? Is Jesus worth your future? The women sure thought so. She believed it. And I think at this point the disciples are probably not thinking that. Let that be an encouragement to us as we struggle with our own futures, right? God has compassion on us, but He is worthy of it. He's worth way more than just $40,000. Let's look at Judas. Let's look at Judas and the Jewish leaders, and let's look at their benefit to cost analysis regarding Jesus. Verse 10. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. Isn't that interesting? After this discussion about the poor, Judas gets upset. And he goes to betray a man that he's been walking with and befriending for 3+ years. And when they heard this, they were glad, and they promised to give him money. So he started looking for a good opportunity to betray him. How nice. The chief priest must have thought. Finally, we'll have a way to find Jesus for sure in the middle of the night when nobody's around. And we'll get rid of it. Clearly, the chief priest's benefit cost analysis was that Jesus is worth paying to get rid of. He's worth spending money on, but only to get rid of. What about Judas? Is Judas actually concerned with the poor? Well, we actually know from the other Gospels that Judas was taking money out of the coffer, out of the account, if you will. He was a crook. He was stealing. So he sees this alabaster jar full of loaded money, and he's not caring about the poor. He's going, dude, that should be in my pocket. He's concerned about himself. And that's what we do in the flesh. We are concerned with ourselves. And eventually, it always leads us to destruction. The plotting to kill his friend. Like Cain, plotting to kill his brother. Judas didn't care about the poor. He was mad because he wanted the money. It's clear that Judas had a cost to benefit analysis of Jesus. Do you remember how much Jesus was sold for? 30 pieces of silver. So he sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Do you know what 30 pieces of silver was a going rate for in this time frame? Slaves. Slaves. Judas sold Jesus like a slave to be killed. What is your cost to benefit analysis of Jesus? You know, I was thinking about this in light of how the older brother in the parable, In the parable it's a younger and older brother. Right? You have this younger son who takes the inheritance and he runs off. Right? And then the father invites him back and he throws a party, and what happens? The older brother's ticked. Friends, let's not be the older brother. When God is... Let's not be the older brother in our disposition towards God or towards those that care and put their lives out on the line. Let's celebrate with them. What's your cost analysis of Jesus? I was thinking even more about this, about how how you see yourself in relation to Jesus will really affect your cost to benefit analysis. Okay, so what do I mean? So I was out hunting, and we were sitting on this hillside, and I have one other time in my life seen the bugs that were out there. It was horrendous. There was 3 species of bugs. I know this because we were sitting on a hill. I didn't have anything else to do. And they were so bad. The only part I had visible was here, and I just had bites all the way around. In fact, they were so bad, my brother was wearing an earplug, and they got in behind his earplug. You couldn't breathe. They were so bad. And I started thinking, man, what I wouldn't give for a head net right now. Right? Man, a head net, just cover this. I thought, we eat a baseball stand, and the guy comes by, and he's like, popcorn? Well, what if a guy came by with a head net right now? What would I give for a head net? $10? Oh, yeah. $20? Yeah. I got up to $100. And I'm kind of a tight wad. And I was thinking, you know what? This is because I'm desperate right now. I see my condition. My condition is I'm going insane, and these things are actually making my face swell. My condition is desperation. How you see yourself and what state you are actually in will affect how you do your cost analysis of Jesus, friends. If you think you don't need Jesus, or you're just along for the ride, or maybe Jesus is worth 30 pieces of silver to you, if that is your cost analysis, you have missed the real Jesus, friends. If you are desperate, if you recognize your real condition before a holy God, and it's, Josh, why do you talk about God's holiness all the time? Because you need to know about God's holiness. I need to know about it. To know how, not only to reflect Him, but also, guys, to know that I need a Savior. I'm a broken dude. And this woman sees it, and she recognizes it. You guys realize there's actually one other person doing a cost analysis in the story? It's Jesus. Jesus did a benefit to cost analysis of you and me. And here's the thing. What Jesus did on the cross when He died to make you right with God, He paid the costs that you couldn't pay. And His benefit was you. Was your benefit. What is Jesus worth to you? Because He has given it all for you. Do you value Jesus? Does it affect how you live? I say all the time that because of who God is and what He has done, we now have a chance to act differently, right? Friends, that's so true. Because of what God has done for you, because God did the cost analysis and paid the price that you couldn't pay, far above and beyond 40, 50,000, whatever you want to call the middle class wage. He is worthy of your retirement. He is worthy of your future. He's the only thing that won't perish, because He's already conquered over death. If Jesus is the creator and he's the king of all kings, then he is worth far more than anything you could spend, and he is worth far more than you will ever be able to put back to him. And honestly, friends, he is worthy of your future. So friends, we're going to go into a time of communion. But I want us to think about how God, in this time, just meditate on the fact that God has paid it all. And that he gives us opportunities daily to give up our lives in the same way to him. Joyfully. You know, she was premeditated on giving away this narc. There's no way you could convince me that she just was like, you know what? I'm just going to grab this narc and do this. She intentionally did it. And we have to be intentional in the way that we seek to make disciples here. It's not just a fly-by-night thing. It's premeditated. Because of what God has done for me, now I get to do the same thing. I invite those people into my house. I care for them. I love them. They mock me. They spit at me. They will do that, friends. We had neighbors slam their gate in our face this day, not wanting to talk to us. But you know what you do? You get right back up. Because Jesus has already paid for it. Your esteem should not be in your job. Your future should not be in your inheritance. Your future and your present need to be in Jesus and what he has done. And so now you can live.